January 15th, 2026, 2:47 a.m. Eastern Time, BlackRock's trading floor. One instruction, 4 minutes. $2.1 trillion shifts out of America. Not slowly, not cautiously, gone, rerouted, repositioned, within hours, and within 72 hours, every megafund follows. Vanguard, State Street, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, all of them. Simultaneously, moving trillions the same direction. Out. Capital flight on a scale we haven't seen since 1976, when Britain literally begged the IMF for emergency loans. But here's what kills me. 142 million Americans have absolutely no idea. They check their 401k tonight, see the number higher than yesterday, feel safe, sleep soundly. They're catastrophically wrong. Because right now, the people controlling $100 trillion in global assets have collectively decided something terrifying. America's financial system is breaking. Not might break, it's breaking. And they're positioning before the crash. Because there's a pattern, mathematical, absolute, inescapable. The same pattern crushed Rome, Spain, the Dutch, Britain. Same stages, same timeline, same outcome. America is inside that pattern now. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what comes next and whether you survive it. America's national debt hit $38.5 trillion as of January 2026. But the debt isn't really the problem. The real issue is what comes after. There's a mathematical cycle, so precise, so predictable, that once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. This pattern has toppled empires for 2,000 years. Same sequence, same warning signs, same devastating outcome. Every major economic collapse in the last 5 centuries followed an identical 4-stage cycle. Understand these stages, and you understand what's coming. A nation becomes the center of global finance. Capital floods in. Their currency becomes the standard for international trade. Everyone wants in. Banks expand. Markets boom. Innovation accelerates. The future looks limitless. This stage typically lasts 50 to 80 years. For America, this was 1944 to 1971 under Bretton Woods. The dollar replaced gold as the global reserve currency. Every international transaction required dollars. America's banks financed the world. Our markets were deepest. Our technology unmatched. Our military strongest. Stage 1 complete. The golden age felt eternal. Success breeds arrogance. The government spends beyond its means. Military expansion. Foreign interventions. Domestic programs funded with borrowed money. Debt grows faster than the economy, but asset prices keep rising. Real estate booms. Stock markets hit records. Everyone feels wealthy. Central banks print money to keep it going. This is where America has been from 1971 to today. 55 years of printing. From 1971 to 2025, debt went from $400 billion to $38.5 trillion, a 96-fold increase. China held $1.32 trillion in U.S. treasuries in 2013. Today, $760 billion. They've sold over $560 billion systematically. Japan reduced positions by $220 billion since 2022 alone. Saudi Arabia is selling, Switzerland is selling, even the Federal Reserve is draining liquidity through quantitative tightening, letting bonds mature without reinvesting. When the world's largest asset manager starts moving $2.1 trillion, it signals something critical. The people with the most capital and the best information have decided the risk profile changed. They're positioning before collapse happens. The currency loses reserve status. Foreign central banks dump their holdings. Inflation explodes, interest rates spike, asset prices crash simultaneously, banks fail, pensions evaporate. Everyone asks, how did we not see this coming? The answer is always the same. The pattern was always there. 3 empires, 3 reserve currencies, 500 years of documented history. Same pattern, same stages, same outcome. Spanish galleons returned from the Americas loaded with more gold and silver than had ever been seen. The Spanish real was the global reserve currency. Madrid was the financial center of the known world. Stage 1 complete. Wealth poured in from every colony. Riches beyond imagination. Then came Stage 2. What did they do with it? They spent everything. Wars with France, wars with England, wars with the Ottoman Empire, wars with the Dutch, a massive military presence spanning 3 continents, bureaucracy consuming fortunes, royal palaces costing kingdoms. By 1550, Spanish government spending was running at 300% of revenue. 3 times what they collected in taxes. Gold kept flowing from the New World, so nobody worried. Asset prices kept rising. Everyone felt rich. Then something changed quietly. In 1555, major Spanish banking families moved assets to Genoa. By 1556, wealthy merchants transferred operations to Amsterdam. Why? They could read financial statements. Spain was functionally bankrupt. The government was paying 40% interest on loans. Desperation bleeding through official documents. By 1557, Spain defaulted. Credit markets froze. Spanish bonds became worthless overnight. The government seized private gold shipments to pay soldiers. The king promised it was temporary. In 1560, Spain defaulted again. In 1575, again. In 1586, again. In 1587, again. 4 defaults in 40 years. The currency collapsed. Inflation destroyed the middle class. By 1600, Spain was a shadow of its former self. The Golden Age was over. Stage 4 complete. Where did the money go? North to the Dutch Republic. Amsterdam was the richest city in the world. The Dutch East India Company was worth $8.28 trillion in today's money. More than Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google combined, times 2. Dutch banks financed global trade. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange was the first in history. The guilder was the world's reserve currency. Stage 1, absolute. Then Stage 2 hit. Wars everywhere. 3 Anglo-Dutch wars between 1652 and 1674. Wars with France. Wars with Spain. The Dutch military stretched from Indonesia to Brazil to South Africa. Government debt increased from 4 million guilders in 1650 to 80 million by 1690. A 20-fold increase in 40 years. They printed money to pay for it. Tulip mania erupted. Tulip bulbs sold for more than houses. Asset prices completely detached from reality. The Bank of Amsterdam was secretly lending out depositor money to fund government wars. A Ponzi scheme dressed in legitimacy. By 1690, the smart money started moving. Banking families transferred to London. Merchants relocated. The exodus was quiet, no announcements, just systematic movement. Why? The insiders knew the Bank of Amsterdam was broke, using new deposits to pay old withdrawals. By 1795, French armies invaded. The Dutch Republic fell. The guilder collapsed. The Bank of Amsterdam's fraud was exposed. Depositors lost everything, riots, political chaos. 150 years of dominance gone in months. Stage 4, complete. Where did the capital go? London. At its peak, Britain controlled 23% of the world's population and 25% of Earth's land. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency for over 200 years. The City of London was the center of global finance. Stage 1, absolute. Then 2 world wars. World War I cost Britain £44 billion, over $600 billion in today's money. They borrowed from America and their own citizens. Government debt went from 30% of GDP to 130%. They tried staying on the gold standard, but failed in 1931, then again in 1933. By 1949, the exodus began. Major British corporations moved to America. Unilever, Shell, BP, wealthy families transferred assets to Switzerland, America, Canada. The brain drain accelerated. Scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, all leaving for opportunities in America. By 1960, foreign investment in Britain had fallen 62%. By 1967, the pound devalued 14.3% overnight. One day you wake up and your currency is worth 14% less. In 1976, Britain went to the IMF for a bailout. The former global superpower begged for emergency loans like a developing nation. The pound lost reserve currency status. Britain's century of dominance ended forever. Stage 4, complete. Spain to Dutch to Britain to America. The pattern doesn't change. It doesn't care about technology, military power, or exceptionalism. It's mathematical. And right now all the indicators show America is in stage 3 moving into stage 4. 38.5 trillion, that's the national debt right now. Not next year, not projected, actual. December 2025. But here's what matters. Growth is accelerating exponentially. In 1980, debt was 900 billion. In 2000, 5.6 trillion. In 2008, 10 trillion. In 2020, $27 trillion. Then COVID hit. By September 2020, the Fed's balance sheet hit $7 trillion. By April 2022, it peaked at $9 trillion, a 1,025% expansion from 2008 to 2022. They didn't do this because the system was healthy. They did it because the system was collapsing. M2 Money Supply tells the same story. February 2020, $15.5 trillion. April 2022, $21.7 trillion. A 40% increase in 26 months. The largest monetary expansion in American history. What does this create? Inflation, asset bubbles, wealth inequality, stock market at all-time highs while real wages stagnate, S&P 500 at 22x to 24x price-to-earnings ratios, tech stocks at 50x earnings with no profit. Housing prices exploded 73% since 2019, rents up 30% in major cities. Groceries up 25%, everything inflated. This is what happens when you print $6 trillion in 5 years and that money chases the same amount of goods. Prices have to go up. The Fed calls it price stability. It's actually currency destruction. Now watch what happens when other countries figure out the math. China held $1.32 trillion in U.S. treasuries in 2013. Today, $768 billion, they've dumped $560 billion systematically. Japan reduced positions by $220 billion since 2022. Saudi Arabia held $180 billion in 2017. Today, $118 billion. They're buying gold instead, buying real assets, buying anything with intrinsic value instead of U.S. debt. Switzerland is selling. Belgium reduced holdings by $30 billion in 2024 alone. Even the Federal Reserve is draining liquidity. BlackRock, with $10 trillion in assets, has systematically reduced U.S. Treasury exposure, increased positions in emerging markets, European infrastructure, Asian real estate, gold, commodities. JP Morgan reduced U.S. equity recommendations from overweight to neutral in Q3 2024. Goldman Sachs reduced recommendations. Morgan Stanley increased international allocation guidance. Bridgewater Associates warned about dollar devaluation for years. This is institutional capital flight verified. The dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves declined from 71% in 2000 to 57% by late 2024. At this pace, the dollar could fall below 50% within 3 to 5 years. When reserve currency drops below 50% dominance, it loses status. Alternative currencies are rising. The euro's share increased from 18% to 22%. Chinese yuan is growing. Indian rupee is growing. China and Brazil trade in yuan. India and Russia settle in rupees. BRICS nations are building alternative systems. Over 40% of global GDP is now in BRICS-aligned countries building infrastructure to trade without dollars. In 2024, 142,000 millionaires relocated internationally. That's the highest number ever recorded. Projections for 2025 indicate 165,000 relocating, the largest voluntary transfer of private capital in modern history. The UK is losing 168 out of 500 millionaires and $66 billion in liquid wealth. Where are they going? The UAE, Singapore, Switzerland, Portugal, Monaco, Dubai, places with political stability and asset-friendly policies. These aren't tax decisions. Wealthy people have accountants. This migration is about capital preservation. It's about positioning before collapse. The elite are reading the same numbers and concluding the same thing. The system is ending. The Fed raised rates from 0% in March 2022 to 5.5% by July 2023. Every 1% increase cost the government $400 billion annually in additional interest on $38.5 trillion debt. So raising rates from 0% to 5.5% increased the annual interest bill by $2.2 trillion. But the government didn't cut spending. The deficit exploded at $1.8 trillion. The Fed created an impossible situation. They can't raise rates further without crushing debt. They can't cut rates without destroying the currency. They're trapped in a death spiral. More printing creates inflation. Higher inflation forces rate increases. Higher rates increase deficits. More deficits require more printing. Former Fed Chair Janet Yellen warned on January 5, 2026, the preconditions for fiscal dominance are clearly strengthening. The government's debt is so enormous it controls what the Fed can do. In fiscal dominance, the central bank can't raise rates because debt becomes unpayable. It can't cut rates because the currency collapses. The government prints. That's hyperinflation. Stage 4 arrives without announcement. The currency loses reserve status. Foreign central banks dump holdings. Inflation explodes vertically. Prices double, triple, quadruple in months. The Federal Reserve faces a choice: raise rates and make debt unpayable, or cut rates and destroy the currency. Either way, asset prices crash simultaneously. Banks fail, pension funds collapse, retirement accounts evaporate, the cascade begins. Here's the truth. 99% of Americans don't understand. Stage 4 wealth transfers are the largest redistribution events in human history. Trillions shift from one group to another in months. The transfer isn't random. It follows a precise pattern based on what you hold. Those holding currency get destroyed. If your net worth is in dollars, savings accounts, checking accounts, money market funds, you get wiped out. Your purchasing power evaporates. $1 million becomes $100,000 in real value. Your lifetime of work, gone. Those holding hard assets survive. Not just survive, they thrive. In every historical collapse, those holding gold, silver, productive land, real assets, they preserved wealth. In Rome, those holding land survived. In Amsterdam, those with gold preserved wealth. In Britain, those moving to dollars and hard assets maintained purchasing power. Hard assets retain value. Currency doesn't. You have 6 to 24 months to position yourself. Not years, months. Every month you wait is a month the smart money gets positioned while you're exposed. Once stage 4 begins, moving capital becomes impossible. Banks limit withdrawals. Capital controls get imposed. Wealth taxes get enacted. The government traps capital inside. Here's what smart money does. Geographic diversification. They don't keep 100% of assets in one country. They spread across multiple jurisdictions, UAE, Singapore, Switzerland, places with political stability, asset-friendly policies, low taxes. Why? Geographic risk is real. Having assets in multiple countries provides optionality. Second, currency diversification. They don't hold 100% in dollars. They hold Swiss francs, Singapore dollars, Norwegian krone. Some hold gold. When the dollar devalues, these currencies become more valuable relative to it. It's about maintaining purchasing power. Third, asset class diversification. They don't hold 100% in stocks, bonds, or real estate. They hold gold, silver, commodities, productive land. Hard assets retain value through currency crises. Fourth, skill diversification. They have income streams independent of the collapsing currency, business assets, intellectual property, skills that create value across borders. During crises, earning capacity matters. Here's what you need to do immediately. Assess your exposure. If over 70% of your net worth is in US dollars or dollar-denominated assets, you're overexposed. The target is 40-60% maximum in any single currency or country. Open a foreign bank account, it's legal. Many countries allow Americans, Singapore, Switzerland, the UAE, Europe. Move a percentage of liquid assets there. Not all, but some. This provides optionality if capital controls get imposed. Buy hard assets. 10 not in 20% of your portfolio in gold and silver is reasonable insurance. Hard assets retain value when currencies collapse. Consider real estate in stable countries, not as investment, but as geographic hedge. A property in another country gives you somewhere to go if things deteriorate rapidly in the US. Reduce debt immediately. Mortgage, car payments, credit card debt, investment leverage, all are your biggest vulnerability. Debt is a bet that your income stays stable and your currency stays stable. Both assumptions are breaking. Increase your skills in areas that retain value. Healthcare, engineering, trades, technology, languages, skills that create value across borders. During crises, earning capacity matters. Build international networks. Communities survive better than individuals. Access to networks is access to opportunities. Stay informed. Watch the indicators. When foreign central banks dump treasuries significantly, when dollar index collapses, when gold spikes 10% in a week, when treasury yields jump 200 basis points, when credit markets dysfunction, these signal stage 4 beginning. The people who survive are those who understand the pattern, believe the data, and act despite social pressure. They move early, they position correctly, they survive, they prosper. America is in stage 3. The data is undeniable. BlackRock moved $2.1 trillion. Foreign central banks are selling. Major institutions are restructuring. The indicators are screaming. Stage 4 is coming within 6 to 24 months. The only question is whether you'll position yourself correctly or whether you'll be asking, how didn't I see this coming when all the signs were right there? The information is here. The pattern is clear. The data is verifiable. The choice is yours, but choose quickly because the window is closing. Subscribe now. Hit the notification bell. The next video reveals exactly which 3 asset classes historically outperformed during stage 4 collapses. The sectors that could protect your wealth or even position you to profit from what's coming. This is the pattern. This is the reality. The question is, will you be ready when it arrives?